you, it feels like it's happening again. I feel the BPM, I feel the usually I'm hard to please, but I feel
Hello everyone and welcome back to Record Watch, the new best musical variety show on the internet. And let's be real, you guys are only here for one thing. I'm not gonna waste your time, so let's just get on with it. The newest album by Taylor Swift, The Life of a Showgirl.
you wanna see me all alone.
Do you know how hard it is to try to find something new to say about Taylor Swift? In 2025, there have been books, documentaries, and several very long video essays documenting everything about this woman's life for the last 15 years. And you expect me, of all people, to have something novel to add to the discourse? Well, I may as well try, but first, some qualifiers. I am not a Swiftie, if that's pretty clearly obvious, but I am still a fan. So if I'm gonna go through her discography, and brace yourself, this will be long-winded, the self-titled is skippable. Fearless is decent with some great singles, especially White Horse. Speak Now is a legit fantastic pop country album. Red is alright, but highly overrated. 1989 is mostly great with a few dud singles. Reputation is an absolute mess. Lover is bloated with some awful moments, but includes some of her best ever songs. Folklore is her best because, again, I'm an indie rock hipster, with Evermore feeling like glorified B-sides. Midnights is pretty solid, but rather unmemorable. And Torture Poets is an album I like way more than I probably should. If you want a quick ranking of all those albums, boom, here you go, have fun. Now, one of the reasons why I think the Torture Poets department works at all is a very good balance of scale and tone. The album is pissy, petulant, openly not self-aware, and if that makes it way too difficult to connect with a billionaire still trying to carry out high school fantasies, I completely understand. But between the earnest bombast and some legit fantastic hooks, it worked. At least for me. That being said, this balancing act becomes increasingly difficult to manage the further she oversaturates the market, especially with a media environment only delivering rapturous praise onto her to get easy clicks from a diehard fanbase. Where if the next album is even slightly underwhelming, it would probably lead to a social media firestorm and a clear indication of diminishing returns. And as someone who was on Twitter the night this released, boy was this prediction validated. And while it'll probably be validating to all of you Swiftie haters to see me dunk all over this album, surely the biggest crime of A Life of a Showgirl isn't that it's some two-car pile-up like Reputation is to some extent. No, it's that it commits the biggest sin an album can be. It's boring. This may not be Taylor Swift's worst album, but it might be her least good and least essential, and to many, that is arguably worse. With that being said, I'm going to diagnose the album's biggest issue: production and mastering. This album ranking doesn't make it clear already. I was never on the Jack Antonoff hate train, especially alongside Aaron Dessner, which allowed her more recent albums to maintain a nice balance between authentic indie texture and more refined pop gloss. However, with Antonoff gone in favor of Max Martin, whose hit record with Taylor has always been shakier than many admit, and with this album, it feels like he's just chucking presets at the wall and seeing what sticks, and often not well-blended ones. The vocals are naturally front and center for a pop album, but the pickups are increasingly muddied and somehow sound buried in the mix, and whatever string accents and bass grooves are to be found feels very stock and unengaging. And quite frankly, the percussion just sounds like shit. Whenever there's a distinct choice between using obviously programmed beats versus live drum pickups, it's always the wrong call. With a percussion over melody focus, these failures become glaring. Whoever decided to open Ruin the Friendship with the emptiest, lethargic-sounding drumline should have been fired on the spot. The back half has this odd pivot into slightly dated pop rock tones that I, at least on a reactionary level, enjoy more as a rock fan. But on tracks like Actually Romantic, Cancelled, and Wishlist, it's clear Max Martin had no idea where to take this more confrontational approach. Which is utterly baffling to me. Paper Rings was 5 years ago, and Better Than Revenge is over a decade old. There are better pop rock templates that Taylor Swift has done that you could just pull from. Why is this so hard? And I can't even act like Taylor Swift is saving this album with her lyrics. Again, without a clear or well-executed direction sonically that can at least establish a sense of scale or tone, the clunkier, awkward lines just stand out garishly. This isn't an album about owning your own transgressions, or the allegorical fiction of her 2020 albums, or even a project willing to play up the histrionics of an all-consuming pop star having everyday boy troubles that makes her music either weirdly compelling or relatable. No, instead it tries to half-heartedly stab at all three, plus some mid-tier love songs about Travis Kelce, including Wood, which is unfortunately about exactly what you think it is. This album also marks the return of Taylor Swift's worst lyrical bad habit, trying too hard to be relevant. Is she necessarily in the wrong for clapping back at Charlie XCX on Actually Romantic? Not really. Charlie actually probably deserves more backlash for being an obnoxious edgelord during the Brat media run, but it sure as shit doesn't result in interesting music. To be blunt, while I originally questioned Sabrina Carpenter's inclusion on this album, after hearing both of their albums from this year, I can at least see the comparison. 2 acts pigeonholed to a mainstream image, forcing a sonic palette that isn't clicking, likely due to their albums both being a rush job to capitalize on a dire year for the mainstream pop charts. But to bring it all together, yeah, this album isn't good, obviously. It likely won't kill her career considering the media climate that'll prop her up to this alarming degree, the Taylor Swift industrial complex as I said before. But if her next release underperforms a little bit more than otherwise expected, I won't exactly be surprised, and I might not be so upset about it either, because this wasn't good. At all.
I know. Up next, Man's Best Friend by Sabrina Carpenter. Oh boy, Sabrina Carpenter released her 7th studio album, Man's Best Friend, on August 29th, 2025. The album is primarily pop, but features elements from funk, disco pop, and synth rock. She worked with Jack Antonoff to produce the album, who she also worked with on her previous album from 2024 titled Short and Sweet. The 2 recent albums share a lot of the same elements to me, not particularly in a good way. Both are sonically very similar and represent themes that are shallow and a little superficial. Carpenter has stated that the album is supposed to represent the humanity of making mistakes and learning from them, but I think the message is misconstrued due to sloppy writing and marketing behind the album. When Carpenter released her first single off the album, Manchild, I found the track to sound lazy in terms of writing and sound. I don't think she's incapable of writing emotionally deep and meaningful songs, but I just don't think labeling men as stupid and useless is necessarily empowering. It's just trivial and lacks a certain depth that could have made the message more meaningful. Her 2023 album, Emails I Can't Send, really showcased her ability to write emotionally deep and meaningful songs like the song Emails I Can't Send in Already Over. Since then, her new music has just been a letdown. I feel like she's just trying to produce as many hits as many artists tend to do. But when this happens, a lot of the talent and skill an artist once had just seems to fade away with their music. Sonically, the album also lacks diversity, sounding very repetitive and unoriginal. Most of the instrumental sounds are very similar to her previous work or just taken from other country pop sounding songs. The build-up to most of the bridges also lacks a strong shift and fails to really develop that much. I don't think the genre mixing feels cohesive and just feels really lazy. The album is supposed to be catchy, but I don't know, maybe I'm just not catching it. I don't feel like much of Carpenter's vocal abilities are really showcased either. In the genre of current pop singers, she definitely has some of the most skill when it comes to her range, control, and tone, but we haven't really heard those abilities much since Emails I Can't Send. Not every song sounds bad. I think Go Go Juice and Goodbye do a really good job of developing a sound that actually matches the lyrics to the message and feels more original. Another general problem I had with the album was the marketing for it and the way different controversies were handled. There was a lot of discourse around the album cover and if it was really sending a powerful message when it just kind of felt like a setback. I don't think a cover that clearly regresses women to harmful tropes of power imbalances is really that empowering at all. It can be argued that the cover is a satire, but it just feels really sloppy and degrading. Could they really not have thought of anything else? Carpenter herself has defended the album cover, saying that it's supposed to symbolize being aware of lack of control and has even said that it's perfect for what the album represents. Yeah, I guess with an album that represents one-dimensional themes of feminism by echoing patriarchal imagery and ideals, then it does represent the album perfectly. Carpenter also recreated a photo shoot mirroring imagery from the 1997 movie Lolita, which poses as a major issue. Lolita is a book-turned film that follows a young girl being objectified by an old man. Instead of apologizing for romanticizing a disturbing story, Carpenter claimed that she had never seen the movie and that the photos were just a part of her Pinterest board. All it would have taken is one Google search to have avoided that. I think Man's Best Friend did at least seem to be an improvement since the previous album, Short and Sweet, but it still lacks the emotional maturity and musical range from Emails I Can't Send. There are some moments few and far between where the genre mixing does sound nice and the beats are actually catchy, but a few good songs in an album with 12 different tracks can't save the album as a whole. I hope in the future Carpenter can stop aiming to produce hit after hit and instead can focus on writing and singing some more meaningful songs, showcasing her real vocal ability and range.
Up next, the new album by Big Thief, Double Infinity. Big Thief is back, returning with the band's classic indie folk sound for their 6th album, Double Infinity. The album focuses heavily on frontwoman Adrienne Lenker's soft vocal delivery, contrasting it with sharp guitar segments. And this juxtaposition is a key theme throughout. The opening track, Incomprehensible, is a slow reflection on the fleeting nature of life and a rejection of society's disdain for aging. Words is the first example of a consistent issue with this album, the guitar. While the contrast between Lenker's voice and the screech of the electric guitar is an interesting concept, the guitar overpowers the instrumentation. Double Infinity is where the previous sonic contrasts really come together, though. The song explores the concept of dualities, future and past, losing and gaining, mourning and celebrating, forming and fading. Lenker's folk-style vocals contrasted with Buck Meek's piercing guitar makes sense within the album's narrative. However, the song is alarmingly uninteresting as far as arrangement goes, especially for a titular track. Lyrically, it is beautiful though, reading like a winding poem that Lenker wrote while meditating next to a river. However, comparatively, the instrumentation is pretty simple. The longest track, No Fear, features an ever-repeating verse, contributing to the sense that there is no time. Like Words, the wailing electric guitar doesn't really align stylistically and overpowers parts of the song. Grandmother is a tribute to rock and roll, featuring some of the most interesting instrumentation yet. Its rolling hippie rock sound makes it the most unique song on the album. The last song, How Could I Have Known, is a reflection on a relationship and how it has evolved since the moment it began. Lenker's vocals are cushioned by a chorus of a few voices, creating a folksy atmospheric sound. It fittingly sounds like driving off into the sunset, ending with only acoustic guitar and Lenker's voice. Double Infinity, while maybe not Big Thief's greatest album, is definitely a good one. Big Thief's indie rock folk sound, reminiscent of hiking in the middle of nowhere, is always a nice listen. And I'd recommend this album for indie folk enjoyers, but I do think Double Infinity is best listened to while in a forest, contemplating your relationship with mortality and people. My score is a pretty solid 6 out of 10.
Up next, The Dream by The Favors.
Please have faith in me. Only truth I know is you.
The Dream by The Favors is the first studio album released by both Phineas and Ash as a collaboration. Although Phineas and Ash have worked together on a song, Till Forever Falls Apart in 2021. Going back to the album, this album is a great album to showcase both Phineas and Ash's musical abilities as they both throw in their own concepts and ideas to each of the songs. Phineas and Ash have very good vocals on their own. Some of you might know Ash's vocals from seeing her live at Syracuse about a month ago, actually. But when the two of them get together and create these beautiful harmonies, it really puts these songs into these amazing moods. For example, some of the songs like Moonshine and Necessary Evil are really great at showcasing how well they both sound together. The album isn't just about their vocals, however. The instrumentation coincides with these great vocals and creates this really fun track on these fun and depressing kind of songs. The band called this album a, quote, no rules project that revives the warmth and groove of 70s pop with razor-sharp songwriting, lush harmonies, and a distinct modern edge. Elaborating on that quote by The Favors, I do think that their quote kind of really does feel that influence. I see a lot of styles from the 70s that I kind of feel like, I mean, there is obviously heavy inspiration from the Bee Gees, and I just think that this album is really great. So for anyone who likes music, I highly recommend you listen to The Dream by The Favors, and I would give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Up next, Who Is the Sky by David Byrne.
How did I get here?
David Byrne, the former frontman of the Talking Heads, released his 9th studio album, Who Is the Sky, on September 5th, 2025, alongside with the Ghost Train Orchestra. The album feels very cohesive with Byrne's previous work, featuring many musical theater elements and being credited as an art pop album. I like how the album brings the elements of classical instrumentation and modern production to create a unique sound. The album was recorded with a chamber orchestra but also uses contemporary instruments like electric guitars and synthesizers. I think the variety of sounds used creates a more upbeat and energetic feel for the album. The album does a very good job with tempo shifts and subtly enhancing the moods of the songs through them. Tracks like Everybody Laughs, What Was the Reason for It, and The Trouble with Angels all stand out in featuring really nice sounding tempo changes that enhance the meaning of the songs. The opening track and leading single, Everybody Laughs, explores the complexity of society and how we observe the people around us. The song explores the idea of laughter being used as a universal feeling, yet also hints that laughter can mask pain and discomfort. I was luckily able to watch David Byrne perform the songs off this album on his tour and really admired how he used various images of different marginalized communities to advocate for them through his work. I really admire Byrne's strong sense of creativity and seeing it bleed through his work. I hope we get more music from him in the future, and I really enjoyed this album. I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Up next, the newest album by Rustin Kelly, Pale Through the Window. Are people aware that emo country is a thing? Because it is, and my god is it fantastic. And if you want the best possible introduction to that scene, I'd have to point you toward Rustin Kelly. His first 3 albums, Dying Star, Shape and Destroy, and The Weakness, are fantastic mixes of homespun charm, heartfelt emo lyricism, and some utterly gorgeous indie country texture. All 3 are among the absolute best albums of their year, and are guaranteed to have something to satisfy all fans of rock, emo, folk, country, and more. But after 2023's The Weakness, an album written in the wake of his divorce from fellow country star Casey Musgraves, and carried a significant amount of emotional heft, I was kinda curious where this newest album, Pale Through the Window, would end up. And unfortunately, I do have to preface, this might actually be Rustin Kelly's weakest album to date. Some of the love songs are kinda sparse on lyrical detail, the production lacks some of the low-end heft during the front half, until the bass very welcomely returns on cuts like Pickleball and The Great Wide Open. And there are some questionable production choices. Seriously, what the hell was up with the pitch shifting on the opening of Waiting to Love You? I'll be blunt, maybe I'm just a mark for Rustin Kelly, but this project is still absolutely excellent. And a lot of it just comes down to what Rustin Kelly is able to produce on an album-to-album basis. His vocal texture is fantastic. I really do think his specifically haggard nasal delivery is just a perfect fit for some indie rock texture, and he's always perfect at structuring a pop-ready song. I think Wayside is a phenomenal pop cut. Me and You really kind of feels like an 80s soft rock song in the best possible way. And again, I already mentioned Pickleball and Great Wide Open, but those are some phenomenal rock-leaning tracks that I really connected to. And there are still your slow burn jams like Give Up the Ghost. I think the opening title track is a very good stage setter for this album. It does play a lot on the emotionality. And I think there's a lot of good deep cuts like Still and I See You. There's definitely a lot here to satisfy the overall Rustin Kelly experience. But again, I don't think this is his strongest album. Unfortunately, I think there's some things about his previous work that were so raw in discussing sobriety, his breakup, and a lot of emotional heft that this album doesn't have, and that's for a good reason. He's in a much better place than he was 2 or 3 years ago. Now that he's newfoundly engaged, it kind of seems like he's settled more. And so he should be able to make music that is more upbeat. It just means that I don't personally connect to it as much, which is more telling about me than he is about Rustin. Unfortunately, this album kind of loses in comparison to some of the best albums of the last 10 years, but this is still an absolutely excellent emo country release, and if you want to get into Rustin Kelly, maybe check out Shape and Destroy first, but this is still absolutely worth your time. Check this out.
Up next, by Sombr, I Barely Know Her.
Don't want anyone else.
Sombr's debut album, I Barely Know Her, was released on August 22nd, 2025. The overall theme of this album is the feeling of not getting over someone, and the lyrics on this album reflect a very emotional and personal side of Sombr. The album has 10 tracks, with most calling to the sounds of alternative and indie rock. This album is very impressive coming from an artist so young, garnering him the award for Best Alternative Video at the 2025 VMAs for the single Back to Friends. The album as a whole represents the feeling of longing for someone. Crushing is about the feeling of missing someone and being scared to grow apart from them. This is a great opening track to the album as it immediately ties to the overall theme and message. 12 to 12 has definitely been my most played song on this album. The 4th single released from the album, the song is very catchy and a different vibe from the rest of the songs. This song showcases a different side of Sombr, as it is a more upbeat and funky style rather than an emotional and slower song. Lyrically, it is about insecurity and being invested in someone that may not be invested in you the same way. Back to Friends was the first single released from this album, and it's the most popular. It's about losing someone that used to be so close to you, and now they act like you don't exist. Dime is about the feeling of wanting to be with someone, even if it is platonic, and includes a cute lyrical flip where he calls this girl a dime because she's a 10. The second single, Undressed, is another track that blew up across social media. Lyrically, it is about not wanting to have an intimate relationship with anybody else. The closing track on this album, Under the Mat, which uses the common phrase, leave the key under the mat, to imply that there is still an opportunity for his relationship with this girl to work out down the line. The sense of wondering is a great way to close out the album, as it demonstrates the overall theme of longing for someone and not getting over a relationship. Sombr's I Barely Know Her is an excellent debut album from the young pop star because of its emotional depth and unique instrumentals, with my favorite tracks being Crushing, 12 to 12, Back to Friends, Dime, Undressed, and Under the Mat. If you haven't listened to this album yet, I highly recommend it.
Australian psychedelic pop band Tame Impala are teasing their 5th studio album, Deadbeat, which is arriving on October 17th, 2025. Leading up to the album, Kevin Parker and company released a trio of psychedelic pop singles that show us listeners a darker yet danceable version of the band. The lead single, End of Summer, dropped in late July. The track layers swells of synth and delay-drenched vocals over a steady groove, making it feel like time is stretching itself. This track, along with the other singles, hint at a pop album with an emotional core, discussing hard topics and bringing up feelings of nostalgia and longing. September brought the second preview, Loser, accompanied by a music video starring Joe Keery, aka Dijo, where Parker and the actor momentarily swap roles. This track was a standout to me. The song is sharp, with punchy beats and an addictive guitar riff, and introspective lyrics about self-typissage. This demonstrates Parker's willingness to address heavier topics, even with a track that sounds groovy and danceable. Lastly came Dracula, as a perfect segue into the October spooky season. The song delivers a jam with a pulsing low end, layered synth, and parts echoing vocals. The accompanying video leans into rave culture, matching the album's thematic thread of dance music. But if you're asking for my opinion, I'm at least a big fan of Loser. I definitely see this as a track that I would revisit due to its memorable instrumentation and layered, harmonized guitars. As for the other tracks though, I don't necessarily dislike them, but they don't particularly stand out to me. Dracula is a fun dance track that I add to my Halloween playlist, but I don't envision listening to it much further than this month. It's easy to get lost in the spacey instrumentation and repetition of End of Summer, but I definitely do see the appeal, even if I don't personally connect with it so much. From the singles so far, Deadbeat looks to fuse club energy with Parker's trademark lyricism. The leap still has its risk. Some fans may dislike the shift away from the rock-inflected textures, and to be fair, this album, as it's been released since the recording, has not gone over well with some critics, including myself personally. However, these new singles do suggest a future for Tame Impala that's both emotionally honest and danceable, so I am interested to see where they take this future direction coming up, even if I don't think this Deadbeat album was that good at all. That's all we have for our second episode of Record Watch. I apologize for some of the negativity in the earlier pop reviews, but until then, this has been Record Watch, and we're going off the air.